Hey guys, this is Sports with Dylan. The NHL season starts this week, so this is my 4th out of 4 videos of rankings. You have seen the rankings of goalies, you've seen the rankings of forwards, and you've seen the rankings of defenders. So now we're going to throw it all together in my NHL Power Rankings. Are you even remotely surprised about this one? Without Erik Karlsson, the Sharks are pretty much nothing. So they are by far in the last spot here, and will slowly make their way up the rankings eventually. Well, last year they were 32nd. This year, they would still be 32nd if it weren't for the fact that the Sharks are just so incredibly bad. The Flyers have done nothing to improve their team, and they're slowly making it worse, but not quite bad enough to be miserable, just very, very bad. We'll have to see what happens to them this season, but I suspect they'll be exactly that. Very, very bad. The Coyotes have no defense and really no goaltending. Clayton Keller is a good forward, but after that, you're hoping that a couple young guys can break out, but you really have no idea what will actually happen. The Blackhawks are hoping to make their way up the rankings with Connor Bedard, and hoping that Taylor Hall and Seth Jones, amongst others, can revive their careers. But, for now, the Blackhawks have to be stuck down at the bottom. The Blue Jackets were awful last year. This year, I think they're going to be slightly better, but only slightly. I think Johnny Gaudreau is going to have a better season. I think the whole team will play better, but there's so many competitive teams in the NHL, I can't put the Blue Jackets any higher. I am really high on the Ducks this year, and I think they could do better than this ranking says, especially with a young group led by people such as Trevor Zegras, Leo Carlsson, Troy Terry, Mason McTavish, and Jamie Drysdale. This team should be fun to watch for years to come, but that time might not be quite yet. I like the Canadiens as well. I think they have a pretty good roster, but they're lacking in defense and goaltending, which keeps them ranked closer to the bottom. But who knows? Maybe they will have a better season this year. The 25th place for a team that made the playoffs last year? Am I crazy? I don't think so. Some might think so, but I don't quite think so. The Wild just don't have a great roster. They have Kirill Kaprizov, but after that, Matt Boldy, Matt Zuccarello, Jared Spurgeon, Eunice Broden, there's no one that jumps out as an absolute superstar. This team won't be awful, but I don't think they're going to be contending for the playoffs this year. Without Ryan O'Reilly and Vladimir Tarasenko, this team falls off a cliff from last year's ranking. And it's tough to say where they're going. They might try and trade away more players, in which case then they'll fall closer to the bottom, but maybe they think they're done, they're retooling and starting to push back up to the top. We'll just have to see. Another team that made the playoffs this past year, surprisingly enough. But the Islanders, once again, just haven't done anything to improve their team. Same thing as last offseason. They ended up eventually trading for Bo Horvat, and it's entirely possible they make a deadline trade again this year. But at this point in time, the Islanders just don't look that great. Most are higher on the Sabres than I am, but I have to see proof before I can rank them any higher. There are so many question marks on that team. Is Devin Levi going to be a superstar, or is he going to play like most rookies you expect to? Is half that forward group going to be the exact same question? You know Tage Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin are superstars, and Owen Power and Matthias Samuelsson look pretty darn good as well. But after that, I don't really know, so we will have to see what truly happens with Buffalo this year. In the first video of this series that I released, I said that was a ranking to pay attention to. The fact that I had Cam Talbot as low as I did, and the fact that the Kings were as low in all the rankings as I did. And that gets them ranked all the way back here. I honestly don't think the Kings are that great of a team. Don't get me wrong, I don't think they're awful or anything, but I don't think they're an amazing team or anything. The forward group is fine, but I'd argue it got worse with that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. The defense definitely got worse without Sean Durzi, and now they're relying on Brant Clark to take over and become a superstar right out of the gate. And the goaltending definitely got worse with getting rid of Younes Korpisalo and instead replacing him with Cam Talbot. This does not look like a great team in my opinion. I have no idea what the Predators are doing. They look like they're rebuilding. They started by releasing Matt Duchene. They got rid of Ryan Johansson. There are plenty of other players that they slowly started to trade away and get rid of. But then, suddenly, first day of free agency, they go and sign Luke Schenn and Ryan O'Reilly, both of whom are good players, but they're both getting up there in age. So now I'm just fully stumped on the Predators. They shouldn't be an awful team this year, especially with that defense and goaltending. But I do not love that forward group. I am concerned about how many goals they will actually score, which gets them ranked back here. The Flames team got worse over the offseason. That having been said, though, then the Flames are hoping that with a new coach, players such as Nazem Kadri and Jonathan Huberdeau and Jacob Markstrom can shoot back up in their rankings, revive their careers, and turn into superstars again, which should help this team quite a bit. The Capitals are trying to keep the rest of Ovi's career in contention, but I'm not sure it's actually working. This team has quite a few question marks. I'm not sure they're actually going to end up being that great. We'll have to see. The Kraken shot up my rankings from last year, and while I am not as high on them as some people, I still expect this to be a very good team this coming year, and easily a playoff team. A team that just finished making it to the Stanley Cup in the 16th place? Am I crazy? You are probably beginning to think so. There are quite a few weird teams in this ranking, but when you look at it, the Panthers roster doesn't look that great right now, especially with the fact that we don't know how Bobrovsky's going to play for this season. He wasn't very good last season. It was Alex Leon that carried them into the playoffs, but he's gone now. And the fact that the Panthers will have no defense to start the season with Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour both injured. That leaves the offense, which is good, but it's not amazing, which will have to try and carry the entire team. I am not so sure. When you look at the Canucks on paper, this team should be much better than it is. You got superstars like JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, and Quinn Hughes on your team, as well as solid goaltending from Thatcher Demko. This team should be much better, especially with an improved defense, but it all comes down to coaching and chemistry, how the team will play together. Everyone is putting the Jets at the bottom of these rankings because, they might trade away Mark Scheifele. They might trade away Connor Hellebuyck. And they did trade away Pierre-Luc Dubois. But I think they won the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade by a significant amount. They got a huge return for him, and honestly, they made their team better from it. And Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele are still on the roster. And if that doesn't change, I think this team will be one of the better teams in the NHL once again this year. They have the roster. They just need to not trade away those players mid-season. The Lightning were a lot higher on my list until Vasilevsky's injury came out. Without Andrei Vasilevsky for the first part of the season, the Lightning's goaltending looks miserable. It looks just absolutely abysmal. And I am very concerned about this for the first couple weeks of the season, for sure. The Red Wings pull ahead of the Lightning? I really must be crazy, honestly. I think the Red Wings are a pretty good team. And yes, I did say that last year, and I turned out to be very wrong. But this year, they have another year to develop, and another year of adding more players. I just don't think they're an amazing team. And honestly, I was probably higher on them last year than I am now. But that having been said, when you look at most of the teams they're competing against, they should have a fair shot and easily contend. The Bruins are another team, just like the Jets, that people are ranking quite lowly, despite the fact that they won the President's Trophy last year, people. They had the best regular season record by far. They broke the record for points in the regular season. So why? Why are people them ranking so lowly? I get it. They lost impact centers with Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci. Sure. And that's too bad. That makes this team worse. Don't get me wrong. But that having been said, this roster is still quite talented, and they should once again contend as one of the best teams in the East. Unlike the Capitals, the Penguins have seemingly successfully kept Crosby and Malkin and Letang's twilight years competitive. With the addition of the current best defenseman in the league in Erik Karlsson, this team is looking pretty good and should contend for the playoffs quite well and potentially even their division crown. I've said it over and over again. I am high on the Senators this year. And that's probably going to come back and bite me in the butt. And you guys can all rub it in my face. But right now, when you look at this Senators roster with improved goaltending, this team should be very good and one of the best in the East. The Devils are looking good with an improved offense that I would argue is the best in the league right now. And solid defense and goaltending, this team should be very good. The biggest question though is on defense. With losing Damon Severson and Ryan Graves and expecting Luke Hughes and potentially Simon Nemec to take over, will they be able to properly take over? Maybe they'll be even better, but maybe they'll look like rookies and not play as well as people are hoping. The Rangers are a team that constantly disappoints me, because last year I had them picked to win the Stanley Cup, and then they blew it. The year before, I had them picked to make the Stanley Cup, and they blew it. Over and over again, they keep blowing it, despite the fact that when you look at their roster, they should be much better than they are. They did get worse in free agency, and we'll have to see. Maybe some of the young stars can break out in Alex Lafreniere and Capo Caco, but maybe they'll continue to look like they are right now. Busts, if I'm being honest. In which case, this Rangers team might not be so good this year. As an Oilers fan, it hurts me to put them this low. Last year, I was really high on them. I had them, second, third, maybe? They were looking real good. But this year, when you look more at the team, I am worried about that defense. And that is the biggest thing that keeps them out of this top 5. Despite all of the injuries last year, the Avalanche still managed to perform quite well. So, credit to them on that. This year, with a mostly healthy team, aside from Gabriel Landeskog and Pavel Francouz, then this team should be very, very good once again. The Stanley Cup winners at 4th. Last year, I had them at 1st with the Colorado Avalanche. But this year, I'm not as high on the Golden Knights. I think they're still a very, very good team, but I do not think they are going to repeat as the Stanley Cup winners this time around. The Stars are looking great. I love what they did in free agency, and with more young stars looking to develop, this team, and no pun intended on the Stars thing there, I only just realized it. Either way, this team should be very good this year. The Maple Leafs at 2nd. I know it seems crazy, but I quite like how this team is looking right now. The offense looks amazing, one of the best in the league. The defense actually looks really good, especially if Morgan Riley can rejuvenate his career this year. And the goaltending, led by Ilya Samsonov, should be quite good as well. This Maple Leafs team could honestly, maybe, just maybe, make a push in the playoffs this season. The Hurricanes made it to the conference finals despite being so injured. This year, they're actually healthy. In fact, they have a good shot at making it and potentially winning the Stanley Cup once and for all this year. I'm not rooting for it. Obviously, I'm rooting for the Oilers, but they are my current pick to win the 2024 NHL Stanley Cup. You have it here. But for now, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys again soon.